Dear viewers, I welcome you all for this next topic, which is left out in this spectrophotometric, uh, in this UV visible spectroscopy. That is the spectrophotometric titrations and the applications of UV spectroscopy. So before we go into this title, myself, Dr. Girish A. Hampanava, Department of Pharmaceutical Chemistry, would like to engage you all with this particular topic. And this topic mainly covers the introduction about the spectrophotometric titrations, the shape of the spectrophotometric titration curves, advantages of spectrophotometric titrations, what are the methods that are used to calculate the concentration of either a single component or a multi-component mixtures, and lastly we will be discussing the applications of visible spectroscopy. So, talking about the spectrophotometric titrations, before I go into this very detail of the spectrophotometric titrations, I would like to draw your attention to these two terms, that is the spectrophotometric and the titrations. So, it is in fact the fusion of the two analytical methods. The one is the titrations, the other one is the spectroscopy or the visible spectroscopy. So both are used to determine the concentrations of the unknown samples. But if you are in any way or in some way, if you are making the use of spectroscopy in terms of determining the concentrations which involve the titrimetry, then that we call it as the spectrophotometric titrations. So it is a titration, or basically the titration is a process by which the quantity of an analyte is determined by adding a standard solution known as titrant, with which the analyte reacts is known as reacts in a known and a stoichiometric manner. That is the very basic definition of titrations. So the titration is nothing but any analyte of unknown concentration, if it is, or of whose concentration is to be determined, it is titrated with a titrant which is of a known strength, or we call it as a standard solution. That standard solution, which is a titrant, reacts with the analyte in a very stoichiometric manner, and what we determine is the end point. And here a detector is required to signal when the amount of titrant added is chemically equivalent to the amount of analyte present. So if you want to shift from the regular or the routine titrimetry to spectrophotometric titration, we need something which is detecting the change or detecting the end point when we add the titrant to the analyte. So we need a detector, and that detector is the part of UV spectroscopic instrument. A point of chemical equivalence is called the equivalence point, while that actually measured is denoted as the endpoint. So both are rather the same. A point where the chemical equivalence is achieved, we call it as an equivalence, or rather we call it as an endpoint. If a good endpoint detector and reaction is used, the accuracy of the titration depends predominantly on the accuracy with which the titrant concentration is known. So if we use any detection method or any endpoint detection method, then the accuracy of the titration will be pinpointly noted down, and the titrant concentration is always which is known. So in spectrophotometric titrations, the spectrophotometer serves as a detector, as I have mentioned previously, and monitoring of the sample transmittance or absorbance at a suitable wavelength is done while adding the increments of the titrant. So what we are trying to do here in this is we are trying to club the two analytical techniques, that is the titration and the spectroscopy. So the same titrant setup or titration setup, where there is a titrant and there is a standard unknown sample and where there is an indicator, we perform the titration by using the titrant along with the analyte in the presence of an indicator. But if there is no indicator, or in this case what is we are calling it as a spectrophotometric titrations. We are employing a sort of detector which does the job of detecting the endpoint. So how we do that is by monitoring the absorbance or the transmittance of the sample in the sample vessel, and that happens at a suitable wavelength, and this we do while we are adding the increments of the standard solution, which is known as a titrant. The spectrophotometer sample cell is a titration vessel. Okay, in the regular titration, what we do is we take a conical flask where we call it as a titration vessel, but here in the modified spectrophotometric titrations method, the sample cell is nothing but the titration vessel. And for any titration reaction of the form S plus T is equal to product, where the S is substrate and T is the titrant. After the titrant is added to the substrate, it forms a product. The absorption due to one or more of the species involved is monitored. I mean to say, either the absorption of the substrate, absorption of the titrant, or the absorption of the product is taken into consideration so that the titration endpoint is detected spectroscopically. So the plot of absorbance versus titrant volume is called as spectrophotometric titration curve. Okay, so now we are introducing a new term called as the spectrophotometric titration curve. It is nothing but the plot of absorbance versus the volume of titrant or the titrant volume. If you plot this, then we call this particular curve as the spectrophotometric titration curve, and many different shapes are possible depending on the absorbing species. We will come to that part in a very detail. So ideally, the endpoint is indicated by a sharp change in absorbance at the intersection of two straight line regions of different slopes on either side of the equivalence point region. Okay, so I would like to repeat this whole paragraph as it is very important for understanding the shapes of spectroscopic titration curves. Ideally, the endpoint is indicated by sharp change. This is, we already know that endpoint is always a sharp, and it is a sharp change that is happening in the titration ratio. The endpoint is indicated by a sharp change in the absorbance, and if there is an endpoint, there is a change in the absorption or transmittance, and absorption at the intersection of two straight line regions. I will come to this two straight line regions in the subsequent discussions with differing slopes on either side of the equivalence point region. So just I would like to imagine the shape of V, wherein which two different lines merge at one point, and that point would be the end point. Okay, so we are talking about these two different lines, and the point they will intersect, we call it as the end point, and usually that end point is sharp. So sometimes a rounded intersection results. Okay, these two straight lines will not meet at a sharp point, rather they need to be extrapolated so as to meet at one particular point. So there is no clear intersection, but rather there is a rounded intersection, wherein which I will explain this in the subsequent slides. If the titration or indicator reaction is not quantitative, near the equivalence point, a rounded intersection results. Okay, so I will show this rounded intersections and the two intersections of straight lines with the differing slopes in the subsequent slides. The linear segment before and after the endpoint can be extrapolated to locate the endpoint if conditions are adjusted to Beer's law applies. So if there is no sharp endpoint, as I have mentioned here, if there is a rounded intersection between the two straight lines, if they are not meeting at a sharp point, then if there is a rounded intersection, we need to extrapolate to locate the endpoint. So coming to the shapes of spectrophotometric titration curves, here we will understand the intersections or the rounded shapes. With respect to the shape of spectrophotometric titration curves, before we go into that, I would like to recall your memory to this equation where we have understood already, where absorption is equal to epsilon times C times L according to the Beer's-Lambert's equation, where absorbance is equal to the extinction coefficient times concentration times the path length. So we can rearrange or play around this equation so that to obtain these two terms where A is equal to C or A is equal to epsilon. In the first case, when A is equal to C, I mean to say the epsilon and the path length are at unity, or they are fixed, or they are constant values. If that is the case, A will be equal to C, where absorbance is equal to the concentration. If that is the case, then if I increase the concentration, then the absorbance will proportionally increase. I mean to say, if there is increase in the absorbance, that is because of the increase in the concentration, vice versa. If the other terms like concentration and path length are constant, then A would be equal to epsilon, which is nothing but the extinction coefficient. We also call it as the molar extinction coefficient. So when compound is colored, when compound is colored, then it shows some absorbance. That is the very basic thing in visible spectroscopy. If the compound is showing absorbance, I would like to show this equation. If there is an absorbance by the sample, then it means that this epsilon has some value. I mean to say, if your sample is colored in nature, it shows absorbance, and that absorbance is because of this epsilon value or the extinction coefficient. Whenever there is an absorbance, then epsilon is not equal to 0. Okay, so whenever there is a colored sample, we presume that this epsilon is not equal to 0. That is what I have written here. When epsilon has some value other than 0, then we presume that sample is colored. When epsilon is 0, then there is no absorbance. If there is no absorbance, then the sample is colorless. So that is the case where the compound is not showing any absorbance, and hence it does not have any color. So we should remember these two things. When epsilon is equal to 0, the sample is colorless, and when the sample is having some absorbance, as I mentioned here, it has some value for this epsilon. So when there is an epsilon value which is not equal to 0, then the sample is colored. With that understanding, I will go back to the same equation where we had the substrate which was titrated with a standard titrant of known concentration in order to result a product. So what are the different types of curves that may result out of this standard titration? So what I have mentioned previously was, if there is an absorbance, if the sample is colored, then we usually go for the spectrophotometric measurement. And in the titrations, in most of the cases, there is involvement of color. So there are some cases where this basic equation may end up having different titration curves. So I would like to show you the first typical titration curve where the titrant has absorbance. I mean to say, when there is a situation where only the titrant has color and it shows absorbance, whereas the substrate and the product does not have any absorbance. That would be the first instance. The second instance would be the substrate shows absorbance, whereas the other two, that is the titrant and the product, do not show any absorbance. When I tell it shows absorbance, it means epsilon is having some value and that is not equal to 0. That is what I mean. The third case, when both substrate and titrant show absorbance and not the product. Okay, when the substrate and the titrant shows the absorbance and not the product. Fourth case, when only the product shows absorbance but not the substrate and the titrant. Fifth case, both titrant and product show the absorbance. And the last case, when both substrate and product shows the absorbance and not the titrant. So we'll take these all typical cases individually, one by one, in very detail. So we will take up the first case when the titrant shows absorbance. So we have the same equation here, the substrate, titrant, and the product. We are trying to react the substrate with the titrant. The titrant is taken in the burette. We keep on adding the titrant to the substrate, And this is a case when there is a titrant which is having some absorbance. I mean to say, this titrant is colored in nature. So if that is the case, where the substrate and the product, we can see the epsilon is equal to 0, which means that they are colorless in nature. So if that is the case, where only the titrant is having the color, where the rest substrate and the product is not having any color, this kind of titration curve will result. So it is absorbance versus the volume of titrant. I would like to show this first half of the curve, where we actually start with the titration, and you can see I'm adding the titrant, and that titrant is actually reacting with the substrate. And in order to remind you, the substrate is not having any absorbance, and whereas the titrant is having absorbance. So the titrant is reacting with the substrate stoichiometrically, and just you can see this curve, the rounded portion, as I have discussed just now. This is a rounded portion where there is an endpoint which lies here. So after this, immediately after the endpoint, immediately the peak will start to increase or climb steeply. So this climbing of the peak is because of the increase in the absorbance along with the increase in the volume. That is because the titrant itself is showing absorbance, whereas the substrate and the product is not showing any absorbance. So in this curve, I can show you where there is no absorption because of the substrate and the product. You can see as we are adding the titrant, the substrate is being consumed and the product is being formed here. Once all of the substrate is consumed, at this particular point, there is no substrate left out and all of the product has formed. And since both are not having any absorbance, they do not climb here. But the additional volume of the titrant, since it is having the absorbance, or epsilon is not equal to 0, since the titrant is having absorbance, this curve will result because there is increase in the absorbance. So if there is a two lines, this is the one line and this is the other line. As I have mentioned, in order to find out the endpoint, since it is not clear, there is no clear demarcation of endpoint, since there is a rounded curve here, what we usually try to do is we try to extrapolate this straight line and this straight line as well, so that they intersect at one particular point. And this point, if you extrapolate so that it reaches the x-axis, that volume of titrant gives the endpoint. Okay, so that is how the spectroscopy will help us to determine the endpoint when there is an absorbance because of the titrant, whereas the rest two, that is substrate and the product, do not have any absorbance. I will take the next case when the substrate shows the absorbance. Okay, where epsilon is not equal to 0 because it is colored, whereas the other two, epsilon is equal to 0 because they are colorless. So the kind of titrant, the kind of titration curve we get here is something like this. Again, it is absorbance versus the volume of titrant. Since the substrate is having the absorbance, initially we have the substrate in the flask or in the titration vessel. So there is no titrant being added, or there is no product which is being formed. And you can see the substrate itself is showing absorbance. As I keep on adding the titrant, the substrate concentration decreases and the product will start to form. So in that particular case, when there is absorbance only because of the substrate, that absorbance because of the substrate will tend to decrease eventually with time or with the addition of the titrant. And at some point, there is no absorbance or there is nil absorbance happening because the titrant and the product are not showing any absorbance. That is because the epsilon value is equal to 0. So this is the kind of curve we get. Again, there is no clear demarcation of the endpoint where we have the rounded edges. So we extrapolate these two straight lines so that they intersect at one point. And if we drop a perpendicular line on this particular x-axis, then we get the amount of the titrant which was needed to neutralize the substrate. I mean to say that is the endpoint of this particular titration. The third case, when both the substrate and titrant shows absorbance. Very interesting case where the substrate and the titrant both show absorbance. Okay, so we begin with the titration. Since the substrate itself is having absorbance and is being titrated with another titrant which is also having color, the concentration of the substrate gradually drops because I am adding titrant and the product is being formed, and the product itself is not having any absorbance, and eventually there is an endpoint somewhere here, and I keep on adding the titrant which is again having the absorbance. So this part of the latter part of the curve results. So there is no clear-cut demarcation of the endpoint here, so we extrapolate these lines so as to intersect at one point, drop a line to the x-axis to get the endpoint. Okay, this is the case when the substrate and the titrant have absorbance. The fourth case, when the product only shows absorbance. Very interesting. I mean to say the epsilon is not equal to 0 for the product, whereas for the substrate and the titrant, the epsilon is 0 and they are colorless. A case where I have the substrate in my flask and I am adding the titrant, which is again colorless. The substrate and titrant both are colorless. When I add titrant to the substrate, the product starts forming, and that product will tend to show some absorbance. So there is gradual build-up of the product, and at some point, all of the substrate is being transformed to product, and there is no further product being formed. Okay, so there is a plateau which is being achieved in this particular curve. So this is the shape of the titration curve, wherein which only the product will have the absorbance, but the rest substrate and the titrant do not have any absorbance. So again, if we extrapolate these two lines, they can meet, or they will meet at one point, from which I drop a perpendicular line to this x-axis in order to find out the endpoint. The next case, when both the titrant and the product show absorbance and not the substrate. In this case, the substrate is not having any absorption, whereas the titrant and the product shows some absorbance. So the kind of peak or the curve, what we get here is, since the substrate itself is not showing any absorbance, so there is no sharp advance in the absorption. But as the titrant volume increases and as the product starts to form, this part is because the product has started to form, and up till here the product has formed, and further there is no more product forming, but the increase in the titrant volume, which is showing absorbance, gives this particular peak. Again, an extrapolation to get an intersection at one point to find out the endpoint on this particular x-axis at this particular point. The next case, when both the substrate and the product shows absorbance. The substrate and the product is showing the absorbance, whereas the titrant is not showing any absorbance. So the kind of peak or the curve what we get here is, as the substrate is having absorbance and the product is also having absorbance, this first half of the curve is increasing in the absorbance. Since the titrant is not showing any absorbance, after the formation of the product, I keep on adding the titrant, which gradually drops and does not show any absorbance thereafter, because the titrant itself is not having any absorbance. So these were the cases where the different titration curves were resulting out of the different situations where the substrate, the titrant and the product were having color. In some cases, one of them were having color, the two of them were having color, or only one was having color. So these are the different types of spectroscopic titration curves which we are supposed to understand. Now we will go for the advantages of spectrophotometric titrations. There are several advantages, as I have mentioned. The determination of the endpoint can be more precise. Okay, so in conventional titrimetric analysis, we come across a certain case where we cannot distinguish the change in the color. Rather, the change in the color is so absurd, some of them fail to recognize the endpoint. And since that point can be overcome in the spectrophotometric titrations, the endpoint can be more precise because the spectrophotometer can detect the smaller changes in color shade or the absorbance much more better than our eyes. The titration could be carried out in turbid and colored solutions. Very important thing where we fail to detect the endpoint as a human being. The titration reactions with unfavorable equilibrium constants. I have mentioned the rounded part of the curve is because of the unfavorable equilibrium constant where the color change at the endpoint is not sharp. And in that particular case, this kind of spectrophotometric titrations can be employed and the endpoint can be calculated very nicely by extrapolating the lines or the curves so that they meet at one point to find out the true endpoint. And because of these advantages, the titrations can be extended to very low analytical concentrations, much below than 10 to 4 molar. The presence of other species which absorb or scatter does not cause interference. So any interference, any minute interference which is present in the titration vessel, that does not affect much in this spectrophotometric titrations, whereas in the conventional titrimetry, they do interfere a lot. Concomitant that react with the titrant do interfere. Anything that react with the titrant will definitely interfere, and analytical reactions in case where neither the substrate nor the reaction products absorb. Okay, that kind of situation can be well handled in this spectrophotometric titrations. And commercial spectrophotometric titration systems are available, and they include a spectrophotometer or the photometer, a titration vessel, which is very much similar to our UV cuvette or the sample holder. We call it as the titration vessel, an automated burette which will deliver the titrant in a very much controlled way, and often a specialized data handling system and a plotting capabilities. So it is the amalgamation of UV spectrophotometer along with the conventional titrimetry. So this is one of the commercially available spectrophotometric titration system where there is a provision of keeping the standard solution, and that standard solution is delivered by an automatic burette inside the sample cell. You can see there is a wire leading inside here where we have a sample cell, and there is where this titration actually happens, and change in the absorbance along with the volume of titrant added can be recorded as a reading in this particular screen. So coming to the methods of calculating concentration, we have two different cases where the method of calculating the concentration will differ. The first one is for the single component analysis, and the second one is the multi-component analysis. So what does this single component analysis means? The single component analysis is a case where we are dealing with only one drug in the sample, and in multi-component analysis we deal with more than one drug in a given sample, or it could be a rather binary mixture of drugs. So there are different set or ways of calculating when it is only one drug in the sample. We call it as a single component analysis, and there are different ways we calculate the amount of drugs present in the sample. We call it as a multi-component analysis. So all these methods of calculating the concentration are the quantitative methods of analysis. So first I would like to discuss the single component analysis. We have altogether 4 different ways. Sorry for the numbering here. It should be A, B, C, and D. There are 4 different ways we can calculate the single component analysis. The first one is by the standard absorptivity value method, or we use this particular relationship, that is A is equal to epsilon CL, which is by the virtue of Beer-Lambert's law, and we are rearranging this equation so as to calculate the concentration, which is equal to absorption divided by epsilon L. And whenever we apply this particular method in order to calculate the concentration, of the unknown sample, then we call this particular method as standard absorptivity value method. And for this, we need to have the value for epsilon. We need to have the absorbance for the unknown sample. And this absorptivity will be a known literature value. And the path length is already fixed, which is 1 by 1 centimeter. So when we have the absorptivity value, when we have the absorbance, we can calculate the concentration. And this method, we call it as standard absorptivity value method. And we'll come to the next and the second method where we calculate the single component quantitatively. That is by using formula. We also call it as double point standardization method. We have this particular formula, that is C test by A test is equal to C standard by A standard. So C is nothing but the concentration, A is nothing but the absorbance. Similarly here. So it is the ratio of the concentration of the test to the absorbance, which equals the ratio of the concentration of standard to its absorbance of the standard. So we can rearrange in order to find out the concentration of the test or the sample, whereas C test is equal to C standard divided by A standard times A test. We also call this method as a comparison method, wherein which if you know the absorbance and the concentration of the standard set, we can calculate the concentration of the unknown sample by reading its absorbance. So we have the absorbance of unknown, we have the concentration and absorbance of standard. Simply by putting up the values in this particular equation, we can find out the concentration of the unknown sample. This method was double point standardization method, or also known as comparison method. There is a third method called as the slope method, wherein the equation for the straight line is employed, which is equal to y is equal to mx plus c. Y is nothing but the absorbance, x is the concentration, and m is the slope, c is the intercept. So when we have a set of values for a calibration curve, I will talk about this calibration curve in the subsequent slide. Calibration curve, let me tell so that you will understand. Calibration curve is nothing but we prepare the different concentrations, or we prepare the concentrations in order of increasing strength. So we prepare like 2 microgram per ml, 4 microgram per ml, 6 microgram, 8 microgram, 10, so on and so forth. We prepare those concentrations and we take the absorbance of this particular prepared dilutions. So we plot them across the absorbance versus concentration. As I'm increasing the concentration, the absorbance will directly or proportionally increase. So we get a straight line which is like this, okay? And if it is a straight line, that follows, or that obeys this equation for straight line. And if that is the case, y is the absorbance, x is the concentration, m is the slope, and c is the intercept. And once we know that slope, once we determine the slope out of that calibration plot, then we can take out that slope value and we can determine the concentration of unknown just by reading the absorbance of the unknown, and with the value or the known value of the slope, we can calculate the concentration of unknown, okay, by using this particular formula, that is unknown concentration is equal to 1 by slope times absorbance of unknown. And before to that, we should have this slope value, and this slope value is constructed by using some standard dilutions, as I have mentioned, 2 microgram, 4 microgram, 6, 8, 10, 12, depending on the Beer's range. Okay. So the last one, which is by using the Beer's curve, also known as the calibration curve method, which I was just now mentioning, also known as extrapolation method. We prepare the standard concentrations as I was mentioning previously, 2 microgram, 4 microgram, 6, 8, 10, 12. We call this particular plot as the calibration curve. And once we have this calibration curve, as I have mentioned previously, we can calculate the slope. And if we have the slope, we can calculate the concentration of unknown by this method. Or also, without calculating the slope, if you have the absorbance of unknown, just by extrapolating, the concentration can be determined just by extrapolating the absorbance so that it reaches this particular calibration curve. And after it reaches the calibration curve, simply drop a perpendicular line so that it reaches the x-axis. And this is the concentration of the unknown, what you are interested in. This we call it as a calibration curve method or simply an extrapolation method. And for this method, there is a prerequisite that we should have the standard dilutions and we should have the calibration curve. Coming to the next one, that is multi-component analysis. The calculation becomes a bit complex if it is more than one drug in a system, and we usually end up having this multi-component analysis, and we have several different methods for calculating the mixtures of drugs in the sample. The first one is the simultaneous equation method, most widely followed method, also known as Weierstrass method. The second method is the absorbance ratio method. It is simply the extrapolation of simultaneous equation method, also known as Q absorbance method. The derivative spectrophotometric method. This is also widely used method in the publications along with the simultaneous and absorbance ratio method. The fourth one is dual wavelength method, area under curve method, difference spectroscopy, geometric correction method, absorbance factor method, orthogonal polynomial method, solvent extraction method, H-point standard addition method, least square approximation method. So I'm not going in detail of all these methods, but whereas I would like to emphasize more on these first three methods, and these are the most widely followed. Coming to the first one, as I have mentioned, it is the multi-component analysis method called as simultaneous equation method. And this simultaneous equation method, before I go into the very detail of this, as it is a mixture of two drugs, we take the absorbance of these two drugs, we prepare some dilutions so that those dilutions fall under the Beer's range. I said, what is the Beer's range? Beer's range is a range where we see to it that the absorbance is between 0.2 to 0.8 value. Okay, so we prepare the dilutions in such a way that the absorbance is within 0.2 to 0.8. We call it as a Beer's range. And once we prepare the dilutions in the Beer's range, we take the absorption maxima of the two drugs. For example, X and Y are the two different drugs. And since there are two drugs involved, we call this as a multi-component analysis. And the absorption maxima for each drug, it is different and it is a characteristic value. And you can see in this particular figure, there is a pink peak followed by one dotted peak, which I have represented it as Y. And imagine that these are two different absorbing species, X and Y, which represent two different drugs in a sample. And you can see the X is having the absorption maxima somewhere here at this particular wavelength. I call that wavelength as lambda 1. And drug Y is having absorption maxima somewhere here, and at that particular wavelength I call it as lambda 2. So there are two wavelengths which correspond to two different drugs in a sample. Lambda 1 corresponds to the absorption maxima of X and lambda 2 corresponds to the absorption maxima of Y. Okay, with this preamble, I will go for explanation of this simultaneous equation method. Before that, you can see there is one more peak, which is by the virtue of the mixture. Okay, these are the peaks because of the individual components, and this is the peak which is by the virtue of the mixture of these two X and Y. So coming to this simultaneous equation method, the additivity of absorbances from several species is the basis of determining several analytes in one sample. Okay, so there is additivity of absorbances. If there are two different drugs, their absorbances get added up. For two species which I was mentioning, X and Y, the absorbance of the sample is measured at two wavelengths, and at lambda 1 there is A1 which is being calculated, and at lambda 2 there is A2 which is being calculated. And this subscript A1 and 2 will indicate the quantity that are being measured at lambda 1 and lambda 2 respectively. So A1 is equal to B times epsilon x1 Cx plus epsilon y1 Cy. We know that X and Y are different drugs, and they are these two drugs are measured at two different wavelengths, which is lambda 1 and lambda 2. The two equations can be solved for Cx and Cy. They solve for Cx and Cy by simultaneous equation method, and they end up having this particular equation where Cx is equal to epsilon y2 times a1 minus epsilon y1 times a2 divided by b times epsilon y2 times epsilon x1 minus epsilon y1 times epsilon x2, bracket complete. And similarly for Cy, they have this value. And let me go to the next slide. The absorptivity of X at lambda 1 and lambda 2 is E epsilon x1 and epsilon x2. Okay, so we have two different things here, epsilon x1 and epsilon x2. Okay, so it is the absorptivity of X at two different wavelengths, that is lambda 1 and lambda 2. Okay, that is what we have represented here. Is the X is one particular drug whose molar absorptivity at lambda 1 and lambda 2 is epsilon x1 and epsilon x2. Similarly, for drug Y, at lambda 1 and 2, it is epsilon y1 and epsilon y2. The absorbance of the diluted samples at lambda 1 and lambda 2 are A1 and A2 respectively. This A1 and A2 are the absorbances of the diluted samples, which are A1 and A2 respectively. Let Cx and Cy, this Cx and Cy, be the concentration of X and Y respectively in the diluted sample. So what we are interested in is, we are interested in knowing the concentration of the X drug and the Y drug in the diluted sample. So we employ this particular equation in order to have the concentration. The two equations are constructed based upon the fact that lambda 1 and lambda 2, the absorbance of the mixture is the sum of the individual absorbances of X and Y. So this is how they calculate the simultaneous, the quantitatively they calculate the amount of the drug by using the simultaneous equation method. They go for this equation and they determine all these individual terms, put up those values here, and finally end up having Cx and Cy. Okay, I would like to emphasize this with one small example. So let us imagine that X and Y are two different drugs which are present in the same tablet. For example, let X be the paracetamol, Y be the ibuprofen. If this paracetamol and ibuprofen are made into one particular formulation as one particular tablet, we need to estimate both in presence of either. I mean to say, we need to estimate the presence of paracetamol along with the presence of the ibuprofen. And similarly, we need to estimate ibuprofen along with the presence of the paracetamol. In that particular case, this particular simultaneous equation method comes to our rescue. So what we do is, we take, we make the sufficient or the convenient diluted samples of X and Y, that is paracetamol and ibuprofen. And first what we do is, we try to determine this wavelengths lambda 1 and lambda 2 for paracetamol and ibuprofen. And once we have the values for this lambda 1 and lambda 2 for X and Y, then what we do is, we go for calculating this absorptivity values. And for paracetamol, we determine at its wavelength and at ibuprofen wavelength as well. Similarly, for ibuprofen, we determine at paracetamol's wavelength as well as the its ibuprofen wavelengths also. So we have the absorptivity values calculated at both lambda 1 and lambda 2 for ibuprofen, and similarly for paracetamol we have the absorptivity values. So we have prepared a diluted sample, and at that diluted sample we calculate the A1 and A2. So our main task is to determine the concentration of the paracetamol and the ibuprofen in that particular formulation. So we try to add all these values in this equations, and similarly in this equation, so as to calculate the concentration of paracetamol and the ibuprofen. So this is a bit tedious way to perform, but rather it gives very excellent results. The next one is the absorbance ratio method, which is the second multi-component analysis method which I will be going to discuss. As I mentioned, this is also known as Q absorbance method, and one pharmacopoeia, that is United States Pharmacopoeia, it calls it as a Q value, okay, or this absorbance ratio, they call it as a Q value. This absorbance ratio method is a modification of the previous method, that is simultaneous equation procedure. It depends on the property that for a substance which obeys Beer's law at all the wavelengths, the ratio of absorbances at any two wavelengths is a constant value independent of concentration and or path length. So the ratio of absorbances at any two wavelengths is a constant value which is independent of the concentration or path length. This particular property is utilized in this absorbance ratio method. And this absorbance ratio method uses the ratio of absorbances, as I have mentioned, at two selected wavelengths. One which is an isoabsorptive value. I will tell you what is mean by isoabsorptive value. And the other one being the lambda max of one of the two component drugs. Okay. So what they do is they will take the ratio of absorbances at two different wavelengths. One wavelength is an isoabsorptive point, and the other wavelength is the absorption maxima of one of the two drugs. So as I have mentioned, in USP the ratio is referred to as Q value. Okay, so let me emphasize what is isoabsorptive value, and we already know what is the lambda max. Okay, so isoabsorptive value, okay, I will draw your attention to this particular image here, where there are two different drugs showing some absorbance, and there is one drug which is VAL, valsartan, and the other peak is the hydrochlorothiazide, which they have mentioned it as HCTZ. Okay, and these are the UV absorption peaks of these two drugs, which they have plotted absorbance versus wavelength. And you can see this first, that is the valsartan peak, is coinciding with this hydrochlorothiazide peak somewhere here. Okay, and also here. We can either take this or also this, but it is recommended to take the one which is to the lower wavelength. Okay, so at this particular point where the two peaks coincide, the peak of valsartan and the peak of hydrochlorothiazide, where they coincide, we take that as an isobastic point or isoabsorptive point. It is also called as isobastic point. And this wavelength they will choose for analysis along with the absorption maxima of one of the two drugs. In this particular case, they have chosen 270 nanometers of this hydrochlorothiazide. Okay, so we have both the lambda 1 and lambda 2 values. One is the isoabsorptive absorptive value or the isobastic point. The other one is the lambda max. Once we have all those two different wavelengths, then we start calculating by absorption ratio method. And in that absorption ratio method, at lambda 1, that is the first wavelength, we calculate A1 similarly as we did in simultaneous equation method, and we calculate at lambda 2 A2 similarly as we did in a simultaneous equation method. Here they calculated, as in the simultaneous equation, they calculate for Cx and Cy similarly, and Qm and Qx, Qy will stand for all these terminologies, where Qx is equal to Ax2 by Ax1, it is the absorptivity values, and Qy is Ay2 divided by Ay1, and Qm is nothing but the ratio of A2 by A1. Okay, so with all those values, we can calculate the Cx and Cy. Okay, this was something called as absorbance ratio method. Coming to the third one, and this is the last multi-component analysis, which I will be discussing, which is the derivative spectrophotometric method. This derivative spectroscopic method involves the conversion of normal spectra to its first, second, or higher derivative spectra. So I will like to show this image here, where this first spectra, which is image A, is the normal spectra, whereas the second one is the first derivative and the second one is the second derivative spectra. Okay, the first normal spectra I can also call it as the zero order spectra, and the second one I can call it as the first derivative spectra, and the third one I can call it as the second derivative spectra. So what is the difference between the zero, first and second order? It is the difference that is being plotted here on the y-axis, where we have the absorbance here in the normal spectra or zero order spectra, whereas in the first derivative it is slightly the range of the change of the absorbance with wavelength against the wavelength. That rate of change of absorbance with wavelength, they term it as delta A by delta lambda. Why delta A by delta lambda is because there is the change of absorbance along with the change of the wavelength. That's why it is delta A by delta lambda versus lambda. X-axis is lambda as we have represented it here. And the second derivative spectra is the plot of delta square A divided by delta lambda square versus lambda. Okay, these are a mathematical transformation of the normal spectra, which are leading into three different spectra, that is zero order, first order, and the second order spectra. So for quantitative estimation of multi-component mixtures by derivative spectroscopy, first of all we have to find out the zero crossing point. What we mean by the zero crossing point? So we have derivatized this spectra from zero order to first order. You can see this peak in zero order has been converted into this. So in a case where there is no clear lambda max available, lambda max I mean to say the peak maxima, if it is not clear, then we do the transformation, that is the first derivative transformation. The point where this peak crosses this x-axis, I mean to say this particular point I call it as zero crossing point. Okay, first of all we need to find out the zero crossing point for both the components, which is component A and B. Now select the zero crossing point of for A and B, so that at that particular zero crossing point other components show remarkable absorbance. Okay, now prepare the calibration curve of A at this particular wavelength. Which wavelength? The wavelength at zero crossing point. Prepare the calibration curve of A at zero crossing point of B, and prepare the calibration curve of B at zero crossing point of A. I mean to say vice versa. Once we prepare the calibration curve at two different zero crossing points, one for A and B, one each for A and B, then we end up having two different set of calibration curves. And once we have the two different set of calibration curves, by the method of single component analysis, we can calculate the concentration using the calibration curve. Okay, I would like to show that particular slide here. Yeah, we can calculate the concentration using the calibration curve method. Once we have the calibration curve for A and B, which are two different drugs at two different wavelengths, which wavelength? Zero crossing of A for B and zero crossing of B for A. Okay, vice versa. Those two particular wavelengths are utilized in order to calculate the concentration of the unknown mixtures. Okay, so this derivative spectroscopy is very complex, rather than it seems very simple, but it is a very complex procedure to follow. So these were the three methods which I was talking about, this multi-component analysis. Coming to the applications of UV spectroscopy. UV spectroscopy has the following applications. I'm not going into very detail of this, as we have discussed the entire UV spectroscopy in a lot of detail. So in order to detect the conjugation, whether it is a diene, triene, I would like to recollect the Woodward-Fisher rule. So in order to detect the conjugation, we can use this UV spectroscopy. Geometrical isomers, trans and cis isomers. The trans isomers have the higher absorption values compared to the cis. So we can differentiate these two isomers. Detection of functional groups. Each functional groups have some particular values. If you can pinpoint those functional group with their ideal absorption values, then we can definitely determine the functional groups. Detection of impurities. There is a shift in the absorption maxima, or the absorption maxima gets disturbed if there are any impurities which are very much similar to the absorbing species. And we can do some qualitative and quantitative analysis. Qualitative is we can identify the nature of the drug, and we can also quantify it based on the previous methods what we have mentioned for single and multi-component. And we can determine the molecular weight. I have discussed this while we were discussing the absorptivity and the molar absorptivity values. We can determine the molecular weight of a compound by preparing its derivative. And we can also find out the dissociation constant of an acid and a base. This by itself is a big practical where we can determine the dissociation constants of acids and bases based on their colors at different pHs. Okay, and we can identify by plotting the pH curve versus their absorbance at different pH. Then we can calculate the dissociation constants. So we'll be performing a practical on this dissociation constant of acids and bases. So with this, I will end up the UV spectroscopy chapter, and we have concluded with this spectrophotometric titrations along with the applications of usable spectroscopy. So thank you for patient listening, and this was the last video in the UV spectroscopic titrations. In the next, we will be taking the fluorimetric and we will be discussing the fluorimetric chapter in detail. Thank you very much.